Hello and welcome to the Commissioners Teacher Advisory Council. This is our September the 7th, 2023 meeting. And do want to begin by recognizing that Dr. Glass is not able to be with us today. He had a prior commitment out of state, but he certainly extends well wishes to all of the teachers who serve on the council and wanted to express gratitude, of course, for your service. So looking at our agenda, item 1, there is our welcome. And I'm going to turn it over to item 2 for our TAC chairperson, Jamal Stiles from Washington County, to do a roll call and approve the summary minutes. Jamal?
All right, good morning, everybody. As I call your name, please unmute and say here. Erica Dill. Byron Wilson. Chad Davidson.
Here, hello. Good morning.
Here.
Carla Criswell.
Here.
Jen Davis. Misty Bivens. April Jackson.
Good morning.
Good morning. Kenita Ballard. Gregory Smith. Amanda Claire.
Here.
Susan Sintra.
Here.
Rosa Cubero Hurley.
Here.
Donnie Wilkerson.
Here.
Jane Modlin.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Melanie Callahan. Carla Lawson.
Here.
Charlene Martin. Jennifer Stewart. Amy Leesgang.
Here.
And Mandy Perez.
Here.
All right, good morning, everybody. We're so glad you're here. Make sure that you do the digital sign-in. On the agenda, click the attendance form, just so that we know that you're here and we can record your attendance. On the
And
next
just a
slide,
reminder, just one
Go
quick reminder too,
Yeah.
TAC members, if you could please make sure that you have your video enabled. That's very important. Thank you.
okay. The next item is to approve the minutes on the agenda. So if you'll just take a minute to look at those minutes and go over what we discussed at our last meeting, I'll give you just a little while to do that. All right, and once you read those minutes, if I could get a motion to approve in a second.
This is Donnie Wilkerson. I move the minutes be approved as submitted.
Carla Criswell, second.
I second. Byron said.
So Donnie Wilkerson first and Carla Criswell second. All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
And then we
So-
can use the chat as well for
Okay.
folks to agree.
Okay. Yes, and if you agree, you can put that in the chat. All right, thank you so much. All right, item 3 on our agenda is House Bill 538, and Matthew Courtney from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, and Todd Allen from the Office of Legal Services and from the Kentucky Department of Education will be leading us through that today.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to just share some slides here. Just one second. And I apologize I didn't get these over to staff in time, but I'll send these slides over to Stacy and she can add them to the slide deck so you'll have those for your record. All right. So I was asked today to come in and talk to you briefly about House Bill 538 to just give an update about what that bill did and what that means for us as educators, and also to answer any questions that you have about the bill today. So I've got just a few slides to provide some updates here. House Bill 538, which did pass through this last legislative session, creates some new behavior resolution requirements that we need to be aware of. First, the bill requires that the expulsion of a student for at least 12 months for a student who has made threats that pose, quote, a danger to the well-being of students, faculty, or staff of the district. And so this is a new resolution requirement for us, with that at least 12 months element being added into the picture. We also see a new requirement that each local board adopts a policy outlining disciplinary response for a student who has physically assaulted, battered, or abused educational personnel or other students off school property if the incident is likely to substantially disrupt the educational process. And so we already have board policies across the state for addressing physical assault and batterment and abuse on school property. But in this sort of digital age where we know that issues can often carry over, happen at home, happen in the neighborhood, in the community, and carry back into the school, there's a new requirement for those local boards to adopt a policy to address those. The key element I want to point out to this bullet here is that substantially disrupt the educational process. So schools are not being asked in this bill to adjudicate every altercation that may happen after school hours within the community, only those that will disrupt the educational process moving forward. And then I'm going to pause. I'm getting some feedback, so I'm not sure if staff can address that. Oh, okay, I think it's good. Oh, I still have a little bit of feedback.
I think someone's mic is on. If everyone can make sure your mic is muted. Someone's mic is on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so in addition to all of this, we do need to remember that Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, still applies to all of these behavior resolutions. So those IDEA requirements and regulations, they override all of this. So for our students with disabilities, we're still looking back to that IDEA when we establish those behavior resolution policies. Expulsion is not the only solution. There is an alternative to expulsion for these students in the bill. Students may be involuntarily enrolled in the district's alternative education program in lieu of expulsion, and districts may adopt appeal policies and procedures if a family wants to appeal that decision. One caveat to this involuntary enrollment in lieu of expulsion is that that placement must be reviewed at least annually by the board to determine if that student's placement is still appropriate. So we wouldn't have a 9th grader being involuntarily moved into that alternative education due to threats of harm and then just left there for the rest of their schooling career. They could be there for a year in lieu of that 12-month required expulsion, and then that would be revisited annually to determine if that is still appropriate for that student. Additionally, there's some new language related to the removal of students from the classroom due to disruption. A principal may establish procedures for a student's removal from and reentry to a classroom when the student's behavior disrupts the classroom environment. And so this is an optional policy for schools and districts to adopt. Really at the school level, the principal is tasked with establishing those procedures if they think that is appropriate in the building. So in addition to that, we have a new suspension resolution, which is that a student who is removed from the same classroom 3 times within a 30-day period is now deemed chronically disruptive and may be suspended. So that suspension is not required. That is a may in the law. But we do have this new definition of chronically disruptive, which is removed from the same classroom 3 times within a 30-day period. And that language has been added to Infinite Campus. So if a school needs to use the chronically disruptive codes in order to suspend a student from school, they have the ability to do that in Infinite Campus and document that. Additionally, the principal may also convene a meeting with the teacher, student, and parents to try to resolve the issue on their own, or may permanently remove a student from a classroom if there is chronic disruption happening, and that decision may be appealed by the family. This isn't really a new bullet. Principals have always had the authority to convene a meeting with teachers, students, and parents to try to resolve issues. In fact, they should be doing that, and we encourage them to convene those meetings and mediate those conversations to create the best learning environment for everyone. But it is reiterated here in the law. Again, federal IDEA applies to all of this. So please do always be aware that IDEA does govern disciplinary removal of students with disabilities. And so we want to always make sure that we are acting in accordance with those IEPs and 504 plans. And then finally, I want to just raise a couple of potential conflicts to your attention that will we will likely see play out over the next couple of months or years as we adapt to House Bill 538 and language continues to be tweaked. First, that 12-month expulsion requirement may violate the rights of students and may also violate the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, in that Attorney General's opinions have stated that penalties imposed for students may not be grossly disproportionate to the offense as to be arbitrary. So that's language right out of that Attorney General's opinion. So what this really tells us here is that context is really key for this this group of students who may be impacted by House Bill 538. A kindergartner who kind of whacks a teacher during a emotional outburst in class in the first week of school needs to be treated a little differently than a 10th grader who says they're going to bring a gun to school and harm someone. That context is really key here. That Attorney General's opinion gives us some indication of that. And then at the federal level, there's some concern about conflict with the Every Student Succeeds Act, as this does eliminate local board authority to shorten an expulsion period, and that is a requirement under the Every Student Succeeds Act. And again, I've said this several times, but I cannot reiterate it enough. For students with disabilities under the IDEA continues to govern student discipline, removal, and placement. And so we want to be very cautious when applying some of the new provisions under House Bill 538 to students who have disabilities under the IDEA, as that is going to potentially violate their civil rights. So with that, pretty short presentation, a pretty straightforward bill. I'm happy to address any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Matthew about HB 538?
Good morning, Carla Criswell, here at Jefferson County. I posed a question about what happens when the students are sent to an alternative program and the behavior continues. Could the local board then extend the expulsion, or come back and say, this alternative set is not working? What's the next steps? We have students here in our building that have been put out of classes, out of their schools for offenses, and they come here and still do the same thing.
Thank you. That's a great question. So nothing under House Bill 538 changes alternative education programs, and so they continue to be governed by other state laws and regulations. For students who are sent to the alternative education in lieu of expulsion under House Bill 538. So let me go back on my slides here. That's really only these students who have made a threat that, quote, pose a danger to the well-being of students, faculty, staff of the district. So for those students, they can be involuntarily placed, but then annually that needs to be revisited to make sure that that is the appropriate placement for them. And then that local board should have procedures for how they're going to do that. And then that would dictate for this group of students what happens moving forward. For students who are put into the alternative education placement involuntarily for other reasons, not under this this clause that is in lieu of expulsion, nothing changes. Everything stays the same.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Donnie Wilkerson. Just a quick comment, Matthew. I just think it's kind of tragic that KDE staff is having to spend so much time cleaning up the messes made by the recent legislature. Hopefully, we'll be taking some proactive stances to remedy some of these things in the next legislative effort, if that's possible. This is just one of many such fiascos. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Matthew. We appreciate your time and effort. And if you do have any questions, of course, you can always put those in the chat and we'll make sure they get to him. All right. Next on our agenda is the Kentucky Academic Standards for Health and Physical Education Review. And that's going to be presented by Crystal Rowland and Thomas Klaus from the Office of Teaching and Learning. You can take it away.
Thank you, Jamal. Do I need to share slides, or is someone else sharing slides?
I can share if you'd like, or you're welcome to do them yourself, whatever
Thank
you prefer.
Stacey. If you'll share, that would be nice.
Yes.
While she's pulling those up, I'll go ahead and just announce that we are preparing for the review and revision of the Kentucky Academic Standards for Health Education and Physical Education. And as part of that, it is essential that we have a very diverse pool of teacher writers to be represented on our review committee and our advisory panels. So if you'll look on the next slide, currently, we have the public comment that is open, and so that survey is open to anyone in your local communities. We want to hear from stakeholders, including teachers, administrators, students, families, business and community members around the health education and physical education standards. So that survey has been open. I believe it opened at the end of August, and it will be open through the end of September for anyone to go in and give us some feedback on the current standards. So you'll be able to take a peek at the elementary, middle, high school standards. You can give comments across the entire document, or if there's just specific standards that you would like to give feedback on, that feedback goes directly to our standards writers and helps inform the revisions that they might make. And so again, we just encourage you to share the survey, participate in the survey as well. And I just want to lift up, we love hearing from students. So if there are students that are in your classrooms that you feel like have opinions and want to be heard, we would encourage you to share that with them also. On the next slide, you'll see that, as I was saying earlier, we are looking for standards writers. And so teachers take the heavy lift for this work, but it's very rewarding work. And we really look to be able to form a very diverse panel of teacher writers from different regions across Kentucky and different perspectives. And so the more people we have apply, the better positioned we are to ensure that we have well-rounded committees for this work. And so the application for teachers to apply is now open through September 29th. And we would encourage you, if you are a health and PE teacher, to apply or to share with others that you know may be interested. On the last slide, there's contact information for Thomas Klaus, as well as myself, Crystal Rowland. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let us know. We would be happy to hear from you. And I'll go ahead. So we have another presentation from the Office of Teaching and Learning. around our standards revisions. So our Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies were revised recently, and they're in the legislative process now. And so I'll hand it off to Lauren Galicchio and Heather Ransom now to kind of share where that is in the process and some resources that might help to support you in implementing.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And thank you all for having us today. So I'm Heather and I'm here with my colleague Lauren, and we're both academic program consultants that work with social studies in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And so as Crystal
We lost sound here. Can anybody else hear?
Yeah, she's muted.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
sorry, it came up with a notification that somebody muted me, and then I realized you couldn't hear me. So I'm not sure how much of that you heard, but again, thank you so much for having us. And as Crystal said, we're going to talk to you all today about some resources that may be able to help with the revised standards that have recently been revised. And if you could go to the next slide. So as you probably know, KRS 158196 required the addition of fundamental American documents and speeches into grade level appropriate middle and high school social studies academic standards. And so this has taken place. And it's really important to note that even though this revision has happened, this does not impact the regular schedule for revision, and the standards are still up for that full revision in 2025. And if you could go to the next slide, thank you. So just for your reference, these are the fundamental documents and speeches that were part of that legislation that are being added to the standards. So I won't go through those, but for your reference, these are the documents, and they are all open source, and they can all be found and used from online. So the question you were left to consider last time was, what are additional resources or supports that could be used to support educators in implementing the CAS documents? So thinking of those documents that were just on the screen, we asked you all to consider what supports might you need to really be able to effectively implement those in your classrooms and address the standards. And so today we want to talk to you about a resource that may be able to support you with this work.
So we created a module series called Supporting Students in Using Evidence. So as you may be aware, the CAS for Social Studies requires inquiry-based instruction that emphasizes student engagement with primary and secondary sources to answer compelling and supporting questions. When sources are complex and written at a high reading level, engaging with them can be very challenging for students. So this professional learning module series supports teachers in learning how to effectively implement sources based on students' needs while maintaining the integrity and content of the source. If you can go to, yeah, thank you. The CAS for Social Studies require that students engage with the inquiry practices of questioning, investigating, using disciplinary concepts, using evidence, and communicating conclusions. When students are investigating, they use those disciplinary concepts. They're engaging with those disciplinary strands of civics, economics, geography, and history, which you can all see in that diagram on the screen. The focus of this module series is really doing a deep dive into the using evidence inquiry practice. So within the using evidence standards, students must learn how to substantiate their claims using evidence. This skill requires students to collect, evaluate, and synthesize evidence from primary and secondary sources. When we conducted teacher workshops, we found that teachers were comfortable in supporting students in engaging with the social studies skills found within the using evidence standards. So as an example, teachers were familiar with how to contextualize a source or how to corroborate it. However, teachers really struggled with supporting students in comprehending the students engage with, meaning like teachers did not necessarily know the best ways to implement complex text-based sources in the classroom. So when we use the phrase student comprehension of a source, as we're talking through this module series, we're talking about the student's ability to understand the content of the source without a teacher explicitly telling what the source is about. So we created a professional learning module series to support teachers in implementing the sources and to support student comprehension of those. The next slide, please. So on the screen, you'll see an excerpt of the inquiry progression of the Casper Social Studies. If you do a deep dive into this inquiry progression, you will see that students engage with using evidence as soon as they start their social studies education. Students are expected to use evidence as early as kindergarten. The first kindergarten using evidence standard states that students should identify information from 2 or more sources to investigate characteristics of a community. So students are required to use evidence to learn about the community around them. This skill progresses in complexity and sophistication from kindergarten to high school. In the excerpt on the screen, look at grade 5, that's at the bottom, and 5 UE2. It says, analyze primary and secondary sources on the same event or topic, noting key similarities and differences in the perspectives they represent. Again, teachers felt very comfortable in supporting students engaging in those sourcing skills, but they really struggled on how to take a source and implement it in a way that supported student comprehension of complex text. Next slide, please. This module series is all about supporting teachers and students in using evidence. Our learning target is I can support students in using evidence to substantiate their claims. For the purposes of this presentation, the success criteria is summarized on the screen. It's important to note that the success criteria as presented here does not follow in the same order of the module series, and we'll talk through the modules that are a part of this series. But our success criteria are, I will be successful when I can modify sources appropriately to support student learning when using evidence. I will be successful when I can support students' mastery of the grade level using evidence standards for the Casper Social Studies. It's important to note that students are required to demonstrate their mastery of the using evidence standards and the essential social studies skills embedded within them. So part of this module series will support teachers in understanding the grade level sourcing skills required of the Casper Social Studies. Additionally, I will be successful when I can develop coherent periods of learning that support students' understanding of the term source while distinguishing between primary and secondary sources. The understanding that definition of a source in Kentucky is very important. A source is anything that can communicate a message in Kentucky. So therefore, in kindergarten, a student can look at a stop sign, and that is a source because it informs them about rules within their community. And in grade 5, that might progress to a student looking at an excerpt or adaptation of the Stamp Act to gain a better understanding of historical events during the colonization to Constitution period. The other success criteria are, I will be successful when I can develop coherent periods of learning that support students' mastery of the grade level using evidence standards, students' ability to investigate supporting and compelling questions using a variety of primary and secondary sources, and students' comprehension of those primary and secondary sources. If a student cannot comprehend a source, they won't be able to engage with those social skills required of the using evidence standards. So in order for students to do those sophisticated social skills, they must understand how to, or they must know how to understand the sources that they're looking at. So during part of this module series, we'll focus on supporting teachers in implementing complex text-based sources when supporting students in comprehending the information found within them. A student's comprehension of a source, like we said before, is really essential for them doing those more complex social studies skills that are required of the Casper Social Studies. If you look at the next slide, we talk you through and share the compelling and supporting questions for this module series. So the compelling question applies to the entire module series. How do I support students in communicating their own conclusions while using evidence to substantiate their claims? And then we have our supporting questions. So each of our modules within the series answers those supporting questions. So what are sources? How do I select sources for investigations? How do I adapt or excerpt sources for grade level appropriateness so students can engage with them? How do I support students' comprehension of primary and secondary sources? And how do I use students' comprehension of primary and secondary sources to demonstrate mastery of the using evidence standards? Next slide, please. And on this slide, we will briefly just show you each of the module series. So if you could just hit enter as I talk, we will briefly go over those. So module 1 is all about using evidence in the Casper Social Studies. So what do the standards say about what students should know and be able to do regarding sourcing in Kentucky? Module 2 is supporting teachers when selecting sources. So we know that we have to teach complex or use complex text-based sources within our social studies instruction, but this also talks about what are some of the other different source types that you can use to support comprehension of a complex text-based source. And that's where we really dive into that idea about a source as anything that communicates a message in Kentucky. the next module, module 3, is all about supporting teachers when engaging with complex sources. So, what makes the source complex? How do you adapt it? How do you exert it? What are the grade level appropriate ways to support students in understanding a source but while still maintaining the content and integrity of the source? Module 4 is all about, what should students do before engaging with complex sources. So there's ways to basically set up the source in the classroom, little things that you can do to support students' comprehension of the source even before they start reading it. And here we really dive deep into those complex text-based sources and things you could do to support students before they start reading it. Module 5 is how do you support students, or what should students do while engaging with complex sources? How do we ensure they are active readers of those complex text-based sources? How do we ensure that they are comprehending the text as they are reading that? And module 6 is all about taking it to the skills and demands of the CAS for Social Studies. So we've supported them in understanding the sources that they are looking at, but now module 6 really says, okay, so once students understand the source, what do they now need to do in order to meet those demands of the CAS for Social Studies? What are the sourcing skills they need to do, like corroboration, contextualization, et cetera, that build on and go beyond just merely comprehending the content of the text-based source.
So we do have a variety of resources that are available to support social studies educators, and they can be found here on kystandards.org. If you click through all the gold to go to the social studies professional learning materials, you can find those here. And so we have several professional learning modules that are available. This one will be available very soon, so definitely check back for that. And additionally, there's an implementation guide that provides all the different resources we have available, and it lists them kind of in order based on what your needs are and kind of where you are in your implementation process. And so definitely check out all the resources that we have available to support the CAS for Social Studies. And if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So one question we'd like for you to consider now is what might be the best method to communicate the release of these new resources to educators. So we would love to hear from you all how we can get the word out and reach out to educators with what we have available to support them. So if you wouldn't mind unmuting and sharing that would be great.
Good morning. I would say probably, of course, email is a great way to communicate information, but also maybe touching base with people at the district level, like curriculum leaders and specialists, to share out this information, because sometimes it gets lost in emails, it gets lost in newsletters, but when you're already in a district meeting with your core content people, that's where you get your best information and resources from. So making a connection with those people at the district levels to get this information out to the teachers.
Thank you very much for that.
Hi, this is Susan Sintra. I would suggest also utilizing our co-ops and KEA. KEA has a big connection with a lot of teachers around the state, so that's one direct outlet we can use.
Great, thank you so much. Any other thoughts on how we might communicate these resources to educators? So we have in the chat social studies district coordinators. Okay, great. So we've talked about reaching out to district people potentially, and then through emails, and then utilizing those co-ops as well, and then maybe KEA. If you think of anything else, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us at KDE Social Studies at education.ky.gov. And that's it. Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you so much. Their contact information is on that slide deck. If you have any other questions or ideas or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to them. All right, next on our agenda is teacher recruitment efforts. and that's going to be presented by Justin Edwards from the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Jamal. Hello, everybody. Like Jamal just said, my name's Justin Edwards. I do see a couple familiar faces, Jamal's being one of them. But I'm here today to talk to you all about the Go Teach KY program, the role of the ambassador program, and the qualifications to join. So next slide. So a quick history, in or around 2019, we started noticing a couple trends. First, as you can see from the graph up there, was a decrease in enrollment in EPPs nationwide, followed by, next slide, a decrease in enrollment statewide. And one more time for me, please. An increase in positions being posted on KEPS. So based off of all of that, Go Teach KY was kind of born. And in the beginning, next slide, our mission was, our campaign was started to promote the 3 specific teacher recruitment efforts. First of which being participation in the Educator Rising CTSO throughout K-12 school districts in Kentucky. Second would be participation in the Teaching and Learning CTE pathway and dual credit opportunities for students. And third would be utilization of the existing alternative pathways to teacher certification outlined in KRS 161048. From there, next slide, in 2019, the program has evolved to today from just those 3 recruitment focus areas to include the 5 principles you see there. So we've got grow your own, recruitment, preparation, induction, and retention. And it's the mission of the Go Teach KY to ensure that all students across the Commonwealth have equitable access to effective educators. So that's like a really quick overview of Go Teach KY. I know that was a lot. Our mission and focus areas that have resources, that's kind of an outline of all of that. But you'll notice I didn't really say anything quite about the ambassador program just yet. And that's because really to understand what the ambassadors do, you kind of need to have somewhat of a understanding about Go Teach KY. So with that said, what does an ambassador do? Well, we've all potentially been at times or met the teacher telling students they should not consider teaching as a career. And that's no judgment. I've been that person. But the truth is, all past teachers, all present teachers, and all future teachers were once students in the classroom. So in reality, venting to those students, while it might make you feel better for a second, it doesn't really fix our problem. And it doesn't do anything to change it other than turn people off from teaching. So next slide. That's where the ambassador program comes in. So the first goal is to communicate with and inspire students in high school and college to consider teaching as a career. There are challenges to being a teacher, sure, and as an ambassador, you may have to address them. But there are also great things too, and we need to promote those as well. Oh, you're a slide ahead of me, I believe. Should be on slide 7. Yeah, there we go. Oh, nope, that's slide 9. Back to. There we go. Goal 2 would be to communicate with potential and current teachers to positively capture the rewards and opportunities associated with the career in teaching. So this one kind of goes with the first one. When you're out in the community, be a light for all the good stuff that's happening around teaching. You don't have to ignore the challenges, but you don't have to bring your own personal brain cloud with you everywhere you go either. And then lastly, would be to support and promote the central focus areas, programs, and organizations of Go Teach KY. So that would be those 5 focus areas from the previous slide. That would be the recruitment, the preparation, the induction, the retention, and the grow your own efforts. Next slide. Program's been going on since January 2020. Last year, we had 18 ambassadors, which you can see they're kind of marked as stars all across the state. We do try our best to have representation from all across the state. And like I said, last year we had 18. We're hoping to have at least that number again. Next slide, please. If this seems like something you are interested in or somebody in your school building might be interested in joining and being a part of, the qualifications to join are up there there's quite a bit of that. I'm not going to read through all of that to you. The highlights are basically you need to be in good standing with EPSB. You need to have taught for at least 4 years. And we will have an initial induction meeting on October 18th from 11:30 to 2:30 here at the Sauer Building in Frankfurt. We can reimburse for the sub, but an ambassador will need to be here that day. They would need to be able to be here that day in person. So those are the main qualifications. Like I said, that's all of them listed there. You all have these slides. Feel free to read through them. But those are the gist of it. Next slide. Try to be quick for you all. I know you got a lot on the agenda. You'll see there is a link to the ambassador application. Feel free to use that if it's something you're interested in or share it with anybody else. If you have any questions, you'll see my email address is hyperlinked right there, and I'm free to answer anything you got right now as well.
Justin, this is April Jackson in Hardin County. I feel passionate about this, mainly because, I mean, I know I teach because of who taught me, but I'm curious what we do as a state at, yes, the Grow Our Own, yes, the high school, but like my children are in college, and every time I chat with a student who is undeclared, I just think there's a huge opportunity at the college level for students that get there and they have no idea what they want to do. So I'm curious what we do at the college level as well. I mean, I know when I'm at every tailgate, anytime I'm feeding a kid, if they're undeclared, I immediately start, okay, well, what do you love? Well, what do you want to do? But I'm curious, you know, because in high school, it's hard to know that they want to teach. But I think there are a lot of freshmen, sophomore, and even junior students in college that could use that guidance as well.
I agree entirely. And that's where with the high school kids, the CTSO and the Ed Rising, that's nice because it kind of gives them a chance to kind of dip their toe in the water. But so far as college and our college students are concerned, for my ambassadors that join, there is not a requirement for interaction on a college campus. That said, there are chances, without going into too much detail because we're going to get in the minutia, but there's chances to earn additional stipends for doing in-person events on places like college campuses, like at career fairs. Because like you said, at an undecided career fair, they don't know what they want to do. So have they considered teaching? So we do have ambassadors that can go to that and they can kind of give a little feedback. And we've done that. We do that every year. And then the other thing, which I lost my train of thought all of a sudden, that they do, oh, yes. We also have ambassadors and alumni, which is a position where you have to have previously been an ambassador for, but that have in the past and do at present, sometimes go talk to freshman orientation classes because they build that relationship with their local college or their local EPP. And then they get asked to come speak at freshman seminar for an hour. And at that point, they kind of talk about dropping the idea of becoming a teacher. So it is something that we do. It's definitely something, though, that we can always do more of.
Oh, that's wonderful. I just feel like with my outreach, especially for those students that are kind of lost and they know their strengths, but they don't know what they want to do, I feel like I've been more effective at that level than at the high school or local. So that's amazing that you guys are already doing that.
Thank you. Byron, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Justin, and well said. And that's an excellent question. So as with a lot of progress, we are minutely funded. And not that, you know, everything isn't always funding, but there's just a fact that it impacts the amount of ground that you can cover because of just physical ability to do so. And so definitely that is a hindrance, and that's something we, as the Division Educator Recruitment and Development and I have tried to bring attention to in order to support more support for the Go Teach as a whole, so that it is a better, more fully funded model in order to address an area such as the campuses. There's also been at least what I can describe as a less than successful attempt at having college level educators rising groups. And That just, for whatever reason, that has not taken off very well. And that's not just Kentucky, that's nationally. But I definitely know that our colleges are of education, this is something that we talk about as much as we can. And, any leverage opportunities that they have, I see it happening more and more where the ed departments are having open houses and of course, they're trying to build their programs, but no, it's an exceptional point. I think it's always another area that we can definitely lean into more heavily. So I appreciate that being brought up. And thank you, Justin. Sorry to bump in there.
No problem. Happy to let other people talk.
Question.
Yes.
Is there any traction or any measurable outcomes that you've seen from the work that you're doing? How's it looking?
It's difficult because we started January 20. So realistically, if you really want to track it, you're going to need right, because it's going to take, if they're freshmen in 20, then they're barely in college now, so they couldn't really.
Gotcha.
So
not quite yet.
Really, not yet.
And also, is there an effort in when selecting the ambassadors and even with like students that you're working with to ensure some type of inclusivity and diversity across the spectrum?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I will say I'm an alumna of the Go Teach ambassador program, and I think one of the most beneficial takeaways for me from the program was attending the Educator Rising Conference and being a judge there when I was an ambassador, and just seeing the kids who were passionate about teaching and learning. So if it's something that you're, on the fence about applying, I would very highly suggest it. It helped me as a professional to see, our students across the Commonwealth who are also passionate about teaching and entering the field. So I commend you, Justin, on running a great program.
Thank you, Jamal. And I agree that Ed Rising State Competition is a great day.
All right, if you have any other questions, Justin's contact information is there on the slide. And you can also put those in this chat and we'll make sure that he gets them. Thank you so much, Justin. We appreciate you. All right, next on our agenda is, sorry, did somebody say something?
Yeah.
Sorry, I asked a question.
Go
And
ahead.
it's actually something I should have brought up. I'm sorry. Applications close at the end of September.
So not far off. All right, next on our agenda is Brandon Harrod from the Office of Educator Licensure as well on the conditional waiver of 16 KAR 5. Brandon, you can go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Jamal. My name is Brandon Harrod. I work with OELE. I'm the program manager for the KFETS program, which is the Kentucky Field Experience Tracking System, and the Cooperating Teacher program. We've seen several actions by the board to very creative actions and forward-thinking actions to try to help not only districts, but many of our students that are in EPP programs, many of them that are non-traditional, that may have employment while also trying to seek their bachelor's degree and get a job in teaching. Some things that we've seen them do is kind of free up the remote technology and remote for student teaching, which has been annually approved since spring of 2020. We've also seen them, help with emergency substitutes, where where students can get an emergency substitute certificate and use that experience for student teaching, and that's been approved annually since September 2021. But the newest action that they've done is helping classified staff members. So at the July 21st meeting, they approved an action that would help school districts kind of grow their own educators by investing in their current classified staff. It would allow them to waive in 16 KAR 5040 section 5, subsection 7. It says that an individual cannot receive compensation while doing student teaching. Now, what this action does is it waives that and allows individuals that are classified staff members to meet all the requirements for 16 KAR 5040 section 5, but maintain their employment, their benefits, and not have to give up kind of their employment and their paycheck while also trying to pursue student teaching, which can be very demanding, while also trying to balance having that employment. So what this allows them to do is if they have a placement within the same district, they may maintain their employment, they may do their student teaching and be compensated while doing so. So this is kind of big in allowing them to not have to be overextended and try to balance both, and to provide an opportunity for people that have experience in teaching to continue to pursue a career in teaching. So is there any questions that anyone may have? I know it's very brief. Is there any questions anyone may have about the current board action? Yes.
Chad, go ahead.
Our district did not sign up to provide that for, like, we've got some kindergarten aides that are getting their degree at night, but now are going to have to quit their aide position to student teach. So was there a reason why only certain districts were chosen, or did certain districts choose not to participate, or how did that work, or is there an answer to that?
I believe this is a conditional waiver for all individuals that are in that classified staff employment. So your district would allow them to pursue this. So they are free to pursue this option. So there are some districts that do what is considered the emergency sub non-certified. Those districts submit an application that allows non-certified individuals to be substitutes, which is kind of similar, but this isn't district applied. This is for everyone that is in a classified staff position may pursue this option.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, any other questions for Brandon?
Brandon, this is Donnie Wilkerson. That's a great program. Are we doing anything, and maybe I'm just unaware of it, to encourage or to facilitate the colleges of ed in encouraging a program where that students in the education department pursuing a teaching degree would be able to be paid as substitute teachers? They're often in the same boat that these many of these classified, especially with older non-traditional students who are pursuing those kinds of things. Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of them are very aware of that program. They are using that program. It's kind of a collaborative event between both the district and the EPP to make sure that not only is this individual getting everything that they need while serving that substitute role for the EPP to be satisfied with completing the program, but that the district can use them in a way in which they see fit. So it is a very collaborative program between both the EPP and the district, and they are very aware of it. Many of them are using it very effectively. It's allowing them to put individuals in the classroom that have some experience already from their EPP program, have some of the basic foundations, and to introduce them to what it's going to be like as a teacher that's a little bit more advanced than, say, student teaching. But they also will have a cooperating teacher that is there as kind of a mentor. It's almost like K-TIP without being K-TIP, because they're in that classroom. They're not the teacher that's been employed, but they are kind of on themselves instituting some plans, and they have a mentor that they can go to if they need assistance. So it really kind of gives them a very unique experience, and a lot of EPPs are using that experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Brandon. If anybody else has any questions, you can put those in the chat and we'll make sure they get to him.
Yeah, I can provide my contact information in the chat for anyone as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Jamal.
Thanks. All right, next on our agenda, item number 9 is Portrait of a Learner. That's going to be presented by Sarah Snipes from the Office of Continuous Improvement. Sarah, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Jamal. First of all, thank you all for having me with you all today. So excited to connect with you in this work and conversation around a portrait of a learner. Really and truly because you all sit closest to the student where this is hopefully going to make the impact on transforming the learning experience for students across our state. So we're very excited to have a little bit of a discussion with you all today. to inform our work and next steps as well. So I have, Stacy, are we able to pull up that slide deck?
Yes, I'll share on my side.
Thank you. I'm going to begin just by giving a very high-level overview and introduction to Portrait of a Learner in case your district has not embarked on the journey of developing a local set of competencies. Dive into an implementation continuum and have a little bit of an opportunity for you all to engage in where your district might be in the stages of implementation, and then introduce you to a guidance document that we hope is helpful to you as you consider implications of a Portrait of a Learner in your classroom with your students. So if you'll go on to the next slide, thank you. A little bit about Portrait of a Learner. At the heart of our Portrait of a Learner conversations, we're really talking about a set of competencies. And you can think about these in three buckets, right? A combination of knowledge, skills, and dispositions that your communities want every single student to have from the time they enter the school experience to the time they graduate. And so really, we're hoping that in developing knowledge, skills, and dispositions for all of our students, we're better preparing them in this more holistic approach to get to really the heart of what we want all of our graduates to have when they leave the K-12 education experience. And so this is also backed by the Kentucky United We Learn vision, which brought together the beginning of Dr. Glass's journey with us as commissioner, a statewide listening tour where we brought together a very diverse group of stakeholders and dove into their stories, right? What was your experience as a student in Kentucky's education system? What are your hopes for the future of our education system? And from that, we heard an overwhelming response to those three big ideas that hopefully you've heard by now, which was that we hope to have more vibrant learning experiences for all students, innovation in our schools, especially for assessment and collaboration with our communities. And so our State Board of Education, as well as our team here at KDE, truly do believe that if we support our districts in exploring, developing and implementing Portraits of a Learner at the local level with their communities, we will truly be making strides and progressing toward that future vision of education that Kentuckians have asked for. And so here on the screen, you'll just see, again, those ideas that a competency in itself really is made up of these three concepts. Knowledge, where you would most often find those core content, skills, and standards as well to support the competency. The skills themselves that students need to be able to apply in various contexts, in the mindsets and dispositions. So what are those traits and habits that a student needs to develop in order to be competent in these different areas as they graduate our systems? So if you'll go on to the next screen. In partnering with the University of Kentucky Center for Next Generation Leadership, they too do spend a great deal of time studying the field, and both nationally and within Kentucky. And from what they've observed, they've started to develop this implementation continuum. So if a community is on their journey with Portrait of a Learner, this is typically a flow of how that work progresses as they implement and go beyond a poster. So as districts develop a Portrait of a Learner, they typically go out, form a committee of stakeholders from their community, come together to have conversations about what is it we hope and want for our graduates. And then they publish that Portrait of a Learner. They create an incredible graphic. Oftentimes our students are the ones who have their hands on creating those and give it a special local flair. But then we know that to truly make the impact that we hope, it has to go beyond that poster into practice. And that's where our teachers are so critical. So again, what they've noticed in a trend as far as implementation goes, typically districts will then begin to develop performance assessment systems. And you can see some examples there on the slide as well. From there, developing instructional design based on more vibrant learning experiences. So inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, conferencing and feedback structures, engaging community in the design of instruction and assessment. So having expert speakers come in, having panels, community problems that teachers are designing instruction projects around. And then again, it continues on to locally adopt policies that support deeper learning, instruction, and assessment until we've hopefully reached a point where we're in a fully functioning instructional and assessment system that really gets back to students at the center with a prepared graduate. So I just want to pause here for a moment and engage with you, if you will, just to come off mute and have a little discussion. Does your district currently have a local portrait of a learner? And if so, where might you place on your own experience your district on this continuum of implementation?
I know Fayette County has the Elevate system. I don't know if other districts use that or if that's just Fayette County, but we use the Elevate, and then they put in moments and they build that throughout their K through 12 education. Is that just Fayette County, or is that something that other districts use?
In my experience, Elevate, and I'm just starting to learn and partner with Fayette, which is very exciting. I think Elevate is specific to Fayette County, but similar structures with the intention of what Elevate is meant to do is certainly present across communities. Thank you for sharing.
I'm new to Jefferson County, but I think we have the Backpack for Success initiative, and this sounds kind of like what they're doing here.
Yes,
with the
absolutely.
With the backpack, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, and again, kind of that local flair, right? As the ownership in Jefferson County, they've called it a backpack of success skills. And Kentucky too now is actually, in November, the board adopted a model set of competencies. And they were co-created by several districts, including Jefferson County, who already had a local set of competencies. And so if you compare what may be present in Fayette and Jefferson, Bullitt County, and others, you'll see things like engaged citizen, critical thinker, effective communicator, empowered learner, creative contributor, and productive collaborator. So our hope in that signaling a model set of competencies is not that every district has to drop what they have and pick up Kentucky's approved set of competencies from our board, but instead we hope that because of the way that was created, you truly see the footprints of districts across the state and the imprint of that on the state model, because it really truly was informed by what we saw in local communities across the state. So they may not be named the same thing. If I were to overlay the backpack of success skills with Kentucky's model set of competencies, there would be some variation, mostly in the naming of the competencies. But when you strip it down to what it is we hope for students, you would see very, very close alignment, I think. Anyone else have experience with a local portrait and where your district might be in the journey of implementation?
I'm Amy Lee Skang. I am from Bullitt County, and I know that our district has been involved in this process for several years now. Even before the pandemic hit, they had started it and then had to kind of take a break and jump back into it again. So this all is really familiar to me. So we're, like I said, we're really deep into this.
Thank you. And this isn't a question on the screen, but for those of you who may not have a portrait that you design instruction around currently in your classrooms, I'm just wondering, how are you feeling about the concept of a set of competencies, those knowledge, skills, and dispositions coming together to inform instruction, to guide the learning experience for students through their K-12 education? Just to surface initial feelings, ahas, wonderings, hesitations. What's the initial response as you consider this approach to the learning experience? I'll say something on that. I'm in Madison County and I actually just texted to see where we are on this, and I'm waiting on a response, but I know it's something that we're starting, but I'm very excited about it and think that this is like a core of how we should move forward with a lot of things. If we can get the buy-in from districts and we can get people to actually do the community buy-in and work together to have these conversations,
I think there's so much potential growth for what can come out of it. And like hearing about Bullitt County and Jefferson County and schools that are, or districts that are already doing it, it's really exciting to see that work happen. I'm pumped.
Thanks, Susan. All right, well, we can go on to the next slide, Stacy, and introducing our guidance document. What we've done with this guidance is hope to meet districts, schools, communities where they are. We hope that this tool is something that could help a community launch their design of a set of local competencies. If you already have a local portrait and are thinking about next steps, we hope that we help you start to develop performance outcomes and indicators as a way to measure from a teacher's perspective. How do I know when my students are growing and making progress and developing these competencies in my classroom? And then from there, giving just a little bit of a taste around some potential assessment considerations around a portrait of a learner. So this is very much a living, growing document, and it's very much dependent on learning from our communities. So it's been informed by the work being done by teachers. I'll talk just a minute about how we've partnered with teachers already across our state to develop this very resource. But just hope that whether you're a teacher, a site administrator, a district administrator, a parent, or even a community member, we think that you would find some value in this guidance document, or at least that's our intention and hope. And so, again, just want to reiterate that we hope that in pursuing a portrait of a learner, both at the state level and supporting our local communities, we really want to take learning beyond the mastery of challenging academic content. We know that's important. We know that equips our students for a successful future. And in addition to that, we see such great value and need in preparing our students with transferable skills that will equip them for life beyond K-12. And so if we move on, we'll explore a little bit into the guidance, and I can drop this in the chat. It's going to take you directly to the guidance document. Hopefully that worked for folks. If you ever go looking for this guidance document, if you just Google KDE Portrait of a Learner, you'll see our Portrait of a Learner website, and on the right-hand side are a variety of resources that'll take you right to this guidance. And I just want to, as you dig in here, perhaps make your way specifically to pages 14 through 19. Those are our model performance outcomes and indicators. So if you think back to that continuum, one of the next steps toward actually implementing and putting this in practice beyond a poster that tells of the awesome competencies that you hope your students will have by the time they graduate, we know that we need to start building out an assessment system that supports and enables you to guide your instruction in such a way. And so performance outcomes and indicators are that tool to make it possible. And what we've done was we asked teachers from across the state within our Kentucky Innovative Learning Network and our Innovative Teacher Fellowship to come to the table and help us design. So we had representatives from grades 2, 5, 8, and 12 come together and really think about what does it mean to be an effective communicator at grade 5? What does it look like for a 12th grade student to be an effective communicator? And so developmentally appropriate indicators and outcomes for those students have been developed, again, as a model. And so if your district has a set of skills but don't know where to go next, we really encourage you to take a look at this as a teacher leader and an advocate in your community to help to form these outcomes for students across grade bands to guide that instruction. So if you'll dive into the document, again, on pages 14 through 19, feel free to explore those. There's one for each model competency in the Kentucky Portrait of a Learner. Again, these aren't something that every single community will have, but we think you'll see similarities across communities. And as you're exploring, I just want to pose the question, if you are in a district that's operationalized a Portrait of a Learner, how do you intentionally design learning experiences to give students opportunities to develop those skills? So how are you intentional, or can you give an example of something you've done to support students in becoming more effective communicators? And if your district doesn't have a portrait, how would you imagine doing this?
Well, I often use project-based learning opportunities in my classroom. I like to invite the community to come in and see what we're doing. Last year, we did a career fair where the students did PowerPoints on their own career they was interested in. And then I had some people from the community based off those careers come in and talk about the qualifications, requirements to get into that career and kind of engage with the students in that way. And they really had an eye-opening moment to understand that what they're learning in the classroom is going to be a benefit from when they leave the classroom. It also gave the kids an opportunity to make connections with some community members. A lot of times they're in their own bubble and they don't really see the workings of what's going on in their own community. And so that was another way to get them engaged.
Absolutely. And that ties not only into being an effective communicator, being able to network and have those conversations with experts in the field, but also I believe JCPS has something similar to Global Citizen, right? Being able to connect with the community, solve problems, connect to identify challenges. So awesome. Thank you for sharing those connections.
I can jump in and say, at our school this year, we actually started our school year off doing a school-wide project-based learning, where we focused on our competencies. And it was very eye-opening to see how much the students kind of took control of their own learning and the connections that they made, not only within the community, but within their small groups as well with their classmates. So working with kids that they may not normally always work with, but they were given the option to share what they know, to show what they know, and they really stepped up and did that. And as I have kind of started working through this, I've been one of those teachers that are like the traditional teacher too, and like to have control of my own classroom. But as I work through this, I'm really starting to see how kids can do more than we let them do if we just let them. So it's been very eye-opening to work through this process.
And I think I would also lift up, just from feedback from what we've heard from some teachers in the past, the last thing teachers need is something else, right? And I can very much appreciate the perspective and the concerns that come with, is portrait of a learner something else? And I think if even reflecting in my own practice, a lot of these skills and certainly the knowledge and the dispositions are things that I was already embedding in my instruction. I just wasn't being very intentional about it. And so I think what this, for most educators, and I'm sure this is true for those of you on the call, it's the intention and planning that go into creating the opportunities for students to experience and engage and practice these skills. It's less so that you aren't already doing this often every day in your classroom. So it's the intention behind it, and it's an aligning of the system to support you in that work, in addition to the rigorous content that you provide to your students. Any other reflections or comments about operations?
It's Donnie Wilkerson. Just a couple of points. One, I think we have to be careful in that we recognize that project-based learning and inquiry-based learning and those so-called student-led opportunities, although they're great tools, awesome tools that I use very frequently in my classroom, that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that we make sure that we remember, and we don't send the message to what quote-unquote more traditional teachers who employ explicit direct instruction methods that are, quite frankly, with effect sizes much greater than the others, that we don't send a message, hey, you need to stop doing that and immediately convert to this other way, that you just need to embrace that as one of the tools in your box. So I think we've got to be careful about that. Everyone needs to be aware of the effect sizes of these various methodologies. Second point is in terms of assessment. Well, I think we need to tread carefully that we don't move so far back to the old CURIS model of performance assessment. Some performance assessments may be good in certain areas, especially performative, but for summative tools to be used in the high stakes manner by a state or a district, I think we've got to be careful that we don't do the good sounding thing and throw out that traditional, those traditional academic content areas that are so important.
Thank you for sharing. And I'll just lift up because Amy's in the room and it's making me think. We have several pilots even across the state. Amy's one who is diving into exploring the possible different ways we might think about assessment without throwing out very valuable forms of assessment that we currently have, right? Standardized testing as it exists gives us valuable information that we do need to inform our instruction, but we know there are also other ways to measure student growth and achievement. Amy is actually participating in a pilot that explores both concepts and skills assessments that are much more traditional in combination with portfolios of evidence and performance tasks and assessments. And so really thinking about broadening our understanding of what it means to measure student growth and achievement within a portrait of a learner and beyond. So just thank you for surfacing that. Very valid concerns and things that we have rolled up our sleeves and are willing to work with communities to figure it out. That's where we are, is figuring it out. Okay, so we'll move on just to a quick mentioning again that this has all been a collaborative approach and effort with our districts. Many of you, if not directly involved in this work, we've reached out, we've been partnering for years with the Kentucky Innovative Learning Network of about 45 districts who are the first to pilot and provide input and feedback around much of this work. Also began with the Kentucky Competency Education and Assessment Consortium. So again, a group of district leaders in 2018 came to the table who already had as frontrunners existing local portraits to help create what now is the Kentucky model set of competencies. And we've had educators, again, from across the state. This is not something that KDE created in a bubble, in a silo. Kentucky teachers created that very document for pages 14 through 19 that you see there with the model performance outcomes and indicators. So please take advantage of that resource. Please feel free to send me any feedback that you have on that document. Again, it's living and live. And then finally, just want to equip you with some additional resources. We have our Portrait of a Learner webpage where you will find that guidance document. You'll also find links on that page to the Portrait of a Learner FAQ. So there are some questions around assessment implications. There are some questions around what does it mean if my district already has a portrait and now the state has adopted one. And so there are some questions there. There is additionally a Portrait of a Learner video that might be helpful if you want to go back into your community and have conversations with district administrators about what is a portrait, what could this mean for us. There's a Portrait of a Learner video there created by Vice Chair Young as well as Chair Robinson, as well as superintendents from across the state. And I believe one of your very own, Mandy Perez, our former Kentucky Teacher of the Year, is featured in that video as well. So just want to give you those additional resources and leave just a moment. I know I'm well over time on any questions that you have lingering. And my contact information is on that final slide.
All right, any questions for Sarah this morning? All right, so her contact information is on that slide. So if you do have any questions, you can email her or put the questions in the chat and we'll make sure that she gets those. Thank you so much, Sarah. We appreciate you. All right, next on our agenda is the teacher morale feedback loop. And we started this conversation several months ago, and this was work that was something handed to us from Dr. Glass. This was something that he is passionate about. So unfortunately, we know that he is leaving us at the end of this month, but even though that is the case, we still want to have this conversation. And we feel like it's an important conversation and important work to continue to have. And so what we're going to do for the next about 15 to 20 minutes is I'm going to drop in the chat a link to a folder. So let me do that first, and then I'll explain kind of what we're going to do here. And I've gone through and made sure that everybody can edit and do what you need to do. I'm so bad about that. So if for some reason when we get into it, you can't, let me know. So in the folder, you're going to see several documents. There are six documents in the folder. And so Chad Davidson sent out a Google form to people in his district with some questions. And so on 6 of those documents are the questions that he asked, or on 5 of those documents are questions that he asked his colleagues in his district. And so they were questions like, what in your opinion is the state of teacher morale in your district? So what I've done is I've taken those responses and put them in that document. And then when we started this work, I created a Jamboard, and people from the advisory council put their opinions on the 2 questions that I addressed in that Jamboard. And so I've put those responses on a Google Doc as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break out into breakout rooms, and you're going to be assigned to a particular question. And so what we want you to do is look at the responses and come up with 3 common themes from those responses for each question, for the question that you're assigned to. And so, if you're saying that the common theme is salary, just somewhere on that document, list that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each document and see, out of all of those documents, is there a common theme amongst all of those documents? So your responsibility is just to look at the question, look at the responses, and then from that come up with 3 common themes from those responses. I've also put in that folder, just in case you cannot see the responses, I've put the PDF that Chad sent. You may have to scroll a little bit to find the question, but they're all in there for you to look at as well. Chad, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, that was, I sent it to more than just our district.
Okay,
I sent
sorry.
it to just our area, 2 of
Okay.
the largest districts in our area.
Okay.
Received that questionnaire. So.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of stakeholders involved here. So that's good to know as well. So we're going to do breakout rooms. Stacy, we're going to take about 15 minutes just for sake of time. If you have questions about that particular question, you can also put those in that document as well. And then I will take, after this meeting, I'll take all of that data, collect it, and put it into a formal document. And then I will share that out with you all before our next meeting. All right, so we're going to break out into breakout rooms for about 15 minutes, come up with 3 common themes that you see, and then we will reconvene to end our meeting. All right, I just want to say again, thank you so much for your thoughtfulness to this task. I've been looking at some of the things that you've been writing, and we had good conversation in our group. And this is a continuing work. This is not a problem that's going to be solved today or tomorrow or maybe in the next 5 months. But hopefully, in the course of our career, this is my 15th year teaching. Hopefully, by the time that I retire, things will have taken a drastic change. And we need our voices to be heard, and we need to make sure that we're being present and letting the people that are elected to represent us know that teachers are valuable people in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so I will take what you wrote and compile it, and then I will send that out to you so we can discuss at our next meeting. All right, so next on our agenda, this is going to be Stacy. She's going to talk about the TAC, the selection process for TAC chairperson.
Thank you. So every year at the start of the school year, we have to come together as a group and determine how the TAC chairperson will be selected. And so last year, the process that the group used, we had a few people nominate to serve. They shared their willingness to serve. And then we collected some information about each of the participants who volunteered. And then we put that out to the TAC group to basically vote to see who would be serving as our chair for the year. The previous year, we had just a volunteer, and there weren't other people who were interested in serving. And the process to determine the TAC chairperson is completely up to the group. So with this being the first meeting of the new school year, did want to open up to the group to get feedback regarding what process that you'd like to use to determine the TAC chairperson for the upcoming year.
I like the idea of people volunteering, and then based on that, we vote.
Okay. All right. And I see someone else in the chat had also seconded that idea, the volunteering.
Questions, anybody?
Okay.
Does a great job.
All right. Well, so I see someone else also suggesting volunteer. Anybody have another thought? Are we pretty much in consensus here, the volunteer? You just use the process we used last year? Okay. All right. Well, let's.
Stacy, this is
Yes.
Chad. Paul, do you
Yes.
volunteer again? Or do you roll off?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that.
Do you volunteer again, Jamal, or do you roll off, or how many more?
So my
sites-
term on this council is over June 2024, so next June. I don't care to do it again, but I do not want, if there's somebody who wants to do it, then you do it. My feelings will not be hurt. I think it's a good opportunity for leadership for someone who wants to step into that role. So I'll leave it up to the fact that if we open up the process and Stacey has volunteers, then we can do the process as that like we did last year. If we don't have any volunteers, then I don't care to do it again. But like I said, it's not going to hurt my feelings at all. If someone else wants to do it, that's perfectly fine. I just want everybody to have that opportunity because, like I said, it is I have grown as an educator, in a lot of ways through this. So I want someone else to have that same opportunity. But if nobody wants to do it, then, I can do
And
it again.
Jamal, yeah, maybe if you could just give everyone just kind of a summarized version of the work that's involved with the TAC chairperson, just so that folks realize what is kind of required. It's a little bit extra.
Yeah. So basically, we look at the feedback. So you all complete the forms. We look at the feedback. I send out emails that you get from me for additional. If anybody has anything additional that they want to talk about, Stacy and I then meet to look at the feedback, and then we develop the agenda from that. She reaches out to people. Then we meet the day before the meeting to look at the agenda, and then obviously, your role would be to lead the meeting as well. And then, after the meeting, we do the same process again. So it is, a few extra meetings. I've taken on the role of the teacher morale person as well, so that's a little extra as well. So it's how much time do you have? I like to stay busy. I don't like to sit, so that's why I do all the things. But you have to decide, how much time do you have to dedicate to this, basically. It's not a lot of extra time, but it is, it is a dent in your time.
Would it be reasonable for folks to have, a week or so to kind of think about whether or not, there's interest in applying? Maybe if we could shoot for September the 15th as like a deadline for you to let me know that you're interested, and that way we could, see if we do have some volunteers, we have multiple volunteers, if we have no volunteers. And then if we had that 15th mark, then we could try to like shoot for the end of the month there to get some voting out if we need to. That way, the 1st of October, whoever's going to do it, that's when we'd need to start planning for our December meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Timeframe sound okay?
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Chad,
and
did you have a
Jamal-
question?
Yeah, Jamal, that does come with a $10,000 stipend, right? As chair of the PAC, isn't that right? Something like that, right?
I wish. We know teachers are poor.
Yeah, there is no stipend or any additional funds with
It
it.
comes with the satisfaction that you're changing the lives of Kentucky teachers. How about that?
We pay in love.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So September 15th is our is the time that you need to send if you want to volunteer to Stacy. And I think it's a great opportunity for someone to step into a leadership role if that's something that you're interested in. All right. Any more questions about that? All right. So next on our agenda is the feedback form, which you complete every single time. We do look at these, and this is how we collect items for our agenda. So we do ask that you do fill this out, because it gives us a lot of information to go off of for the things that you want to discuss at this meeting. And we try to, if somebody puts it on there, we try to honor that. So please do fill that out. Our next meeting will be December the 7th, and then after that, March the 7th, and then June the 6th. So make sure that you put December 7th, 2023 on your calendar for our next meeting. And then we are complete with our agenda. And so I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Chad Davidson.
Sorry.
Okay, so
I'll second the motion. Susan Centra.
Okay, so Chad Davison first, and then Susan Centra second. All right, thank you all so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope your fall semester goes amazing, and I will see each of you in December on December 7th. Take care, and you're a blessing to your students. See y'all later.